Good morning, Mike.
Good
Great
morning.
having you here. And I
Buenos
know
dias.
that's buenos dias. And I know you're going to be talking about 10 examples of good journalism in America.
I will.
All
Well,
right.
Thank you very much. It's my honor and pleasure to address this wonderful group again. I did it a few years ago live on a stage in Miami. I have to tell you, it was one of my most pleasurable experiences. A wonderful organization, amazing people. And I've been through, some of you may know, in Colombia. I've worked there. I've worked obviously in Honduras for your excellent president. I've given speeches in Guatemala, in Peru, but today we'll be doing this virtually via Zoom, if that's okay. As we said earlier, I do not speak well, there's two languages here also, because some of you speak Portuguese, but there's two words I do know that are very important. I know cerveza, because whenever I go down, I also know baño, because after cerveza, you need a baño. But anyway, what I would do, bad, okay. You may have just heard that we are experimenting with something called artificial intelligence. And what we're going to be doing is trying to make sure that I do these podcasts, and they're fun, and they've become very, very popular. And some of them are on easy topics, and some are on very, very, very important, difficult topics. And we'd like to share them in multiple languages. So I am working with a company called Veritone to help translate my voice. I'm going to try to see if it works right now. This is the segment in English. This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. Now, you're going to have to tell me if this is correct or not, but this is E&P Reports. Here comes Spanish.
Esto es EIP Reports, un servicio de editor y publisher magazine. Desde 1884, la voz autorizada de la publicación de noticias.
Let's try it in Portuguese.
Este é o EIP Reports, um serviço da editor e publisher magazine. Desde 1884, a voz autorizada da publicação de notícias.
That is not real, that is artificial. And through very, very innovative technology now, my exact words, my exact voice can be translated. So stay tuned for that. You already heard a little bit about Editor and Publisher magazine. We have been around for a very long time. I've only had it for 2.5 years now. I purchased the magazine from a gentleman in California. If you look it up in Wikipedia, it says we are the Bible of the newspaper industry. And that's the magazine, the print portion. And I still like print. I print a beautiful magazine each and every month. I would like to invite anyone attending this broadcast today to make sure you get your address, if you can, through to me, and I will see if we can get you a copy of this magazine as well. But it's also online, obviously. And our work through artificial intelligence will be in the days and months to come to translate our content into these languages, not just my voice, but the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories we do about journalism every year. Of course, some may not pertain to your culture, but many should, because good journalism is still good journalism. We're all in for email. We have 55,000 subscribers. And by the way, as I said, I now have 4,000 people each and every month that watch my vodcast. And of course, we're on social media. Editor and Publisher has looked different throughout the years. I mean, this is one of the original covers back in the late 1800s. And throughout the years, it has changed and morphed, as we like to say, and evolved. There's Hillary Clinton on the cover, well before my time taking over. Here's one of the most controversial covers we did when Editor and Publisher, as an independent voice, actually took on some of you may have been reading these articles or aware of it, that many newspapers in the United States are now owned by what we call hedge funds. And those are Wall Street bankers who care less about journalism and more about profits. Thus, there are opinions for many people that this is damaging the ability for newspapers in general to do their primary job. Now, please keep in mind, I understand the various countries, nationalities, and cultures on this broadcast, but I am a United States citizen. I live in this democracy, and our founding fathers wrote a document called the Constitution, and in there, very forward thinking, even to today, they put in an article in our Constitution that states there must be a free and unfettered press, meaning that final check on power. And I know this organization believes in that as well. And you fight constantly for that. And E&P considers itself an advocate for the freedom of the press. And we're now focusing not just on revenue and technology, but we're focusing on how to maintain quality journalism in a world now where you hear words like fake news and what have you. Now, let me get on to our topic for today. E&P has done other things throughout the last century or so. We have saluted different people, different entities, different concepts, so we can share those examples to other journalists and companies. For example, we always salute the Pulitzer Prize winners each year. We also, because we like to believe in what's called diversity, we are now saluting women and people of color in our country and people of different nationalities. This becomes something that many people like to read and see as we evolve as an industry to make sure that the people who work in news publishing represent the diversity of the communities that are reading those publications. We also salute youth. This is one of my favorites. Whenever we do our 25 under 35, where we salute younger people, it makes me feel good that we're leaving behind an industry to those that still believe in it. And of course, how should I forget older people like me? I am very old. I am going to be 65 next month. That we obviously then salute people who have been in the industry as mentors, leaders, coaches. Our famous Epi Awards, and I say famous because we give them to the top news publishing companies in the world. We are an international award for digital publishing. As a matter of fact, we were the first digital journalism award in the entire world. This year, CNN, you may have heard of that network, won. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and many other entities have won. By the way, we do send awards to South America as well. And finally, we do also salute the top publishers who have led our industry and made sure that we are on top of the important issues we should be. But that's not our topic for today. Just bragging a bit, if I may. And please allow me to do so. Every year, and for the last 20 years, E&P, that's what we call our magazine, editor and publisher, in short, we're E&P, picks 10 news publishers. 10 publishers, they can be newspapers, they can be digital only. We have one this year. They could be broadcast. As long as they're doing journalism locally, they qualify. And we call them the 10 that are doing it right. And here was the cover this month. And when I was asked to do this speech and I saw it was going to be in mid-March, I decided to say, well, why don't I just take a look at the 10 we're saluting this year and give you a very, very quick overview with your kind permission. Now, keep in mind, here is our list of 10. I'll share it with you right now if you like. And I'm going to break it down in the next 30 minutes, leaving time for questions. But I also set up a very special web address just for you. If you go to editorandpublisher.com/10, I'm going to leave that on the screen for a minute, you will read the in-depth article, which will do a much better job than the overview I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes of these 10. But my hope is, as I show you these 10, because it's not always the same thing that they're doing, the same aspect that makes them, in our opinion, our editorial team, 10 that do it right. One may stick out for you that you can find. And by the way, the list of 10 you may notice is not based on our editorial team saying, this is number one, this is number two. This is done in alphabetical order. So we're not saying one is better than the other. We had over 100 entries. We do a call for entries for this. People submit media companies, and then we judge them with a panel and decide on the 10. We also had runners up as well, or what we call finalists. But let me get started now, since we only have about 30 minutes left for our dialogue. I want to take you, if I may now, to a very, very small town in a state in the United States called Oklahoma. The population of this town is only 7,800. And Ricardo, I know you're still with me. You have some very, very large publications in this organization, but do you also have publishers that that represent small communities as well, sir? I know you're muted now, but I just was wondering, is that so
Yes,
I can be
indeed.
talking to some of them as well? Because we're going to be looking at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in a moment, one of the largest newspapers in the world, and the 16th largest, no, the 9th largest in the United States. But let's first go to a town in Oklahoma that lives on a very interesting industry, one that's highly volatile now, which is oil. This town basically just pumps oil and has pipelines going through it. And its economy goes up and down, up and down. So I'm taking you now to the Cimarron Valley Communications Company in a small town called Cushing, Oklahoma. And I'm going to take you to this beautiful little town to show you this incredibly, unbelievably innovative publishing company. They only publish 2,000 newspapers weekly. And you may ask us, why the heck would Editor and Publisher magazine select out of hundreds of entries those that win Pulitzer Prizes, those that have millions and millions of people watching? Why would a 2,000 weekly newspaper be one of their 10 that do it right? And the reason we liked this one is the family commitment. In a world where families are selling their newspapers out, at least in our world, that's what happened to American publishers, in my humble opinion. And I can document that with many, many articles we've done, that in the old days, before profits were important, families ran newspapers, not just to make money, but to be the voice of a community, to be the record of the community, to help bolster the economy and the fellowship of a community. And well, COVID-19 hit all of us very hard. Our economy was in turmoil. This husband and wife decided to buy a newspaper, and they did it in February 2020. Imagine February 2020, because 1 month later, we pretty much were finding out we were in a pandemic. And not only that, but a few months later into COVID, watching newspapers fail that possibly could have been sold to a hedge fund, they bought 2 others. So the reason the Cushing, Oklahoma Cimarron Valley Communications Company made it to our top 10 was first commitment to local communities. And they started working hard as a husband and wife to resurrect, to revitalize these wonderful publications in these small towns in a very rural area. The other reason we selected this husband and wife company, Cimarron Valley Communications, is an innovation they performed. COVID-19 back in July of 2020 made all of us suddenly go indoors. Schools were shut down. That's the first thing we did here. Kids were at home. And the wife of this team decided, because she was a school teacher, to work with her husband and the editorial team to design a single page in the paper that would be an exercise for the children of the community. It had games and questions, and more importantly, knowledge-based information on different topics every week. And it was fascinating that not only was this becoming one of the most popular pages in the newspaper and families were looking forward to it, they started selling it to other newspaper companies as well. And now I believe it's in over 100 cities and growing. They still produce it. They charge very little for it. I think in United States dollars, it costs you like $50 a month to get these pages, the single page in your publication. But think about that. Not only is that helping the children of a community and giving you new and exciting audience, it's also generating revenue. And in today's world, I think we all agree that it's very expensive to do quality journalism and support it simply on advertising. You need many different revenue streams. So the newspaper is now growing. I should say newspapers. They're in a very big growth mode. And here's the picture that really got them on our list. They're showing us building themselves their new offices to house a new exciting team. So congratulations to Cimarron Valley Communications. Number 2, another small town. We're now going to Greenville, South Carolina. Not that small. Greenville has a decent sized population. We would call that a mid-sized market. This is a weekly journal that was purchased by a company in 1999. Remember, a weekly newspaper company in a town of population size, I think it's about 67,000. There it is on the screen. And they're competing against a big, large daily newspaper. But the growth of this weekly was astronomical. In audience growth, digital growth, they actually were able to not only publish then a weekly newspaper, but just a few years ago, they started a business journal for the community. One publication every month focused totally on the business of Greenville, South Carolina. When that became successful, when they were building audience for that, they then went into what we like to call lifestyle magazines. And I'm a big believer in lifestyle magazines. That's what we call them here in the United States. You may have a different name for them, or possibly the wonderful lady that's doing translation is finding a word for that. It's basically a magazine that is targeted to people of wealth. You don't say that on the cover, but that's an important target audience in our industry, because if you can go to an advertiser and say, I have a product that is read by people of income and education and our homeowners, you're then able to target a better audience for them to market to. And this magazine was about fashion, dining out, entertainment, and local arts and community. Bridging on that, they also started publishing another quarterly magazine simply on the value of your home and home decorating. And they even went off into a yearly guide. Now, this is what I loved about this operation, is the way they diversified. Remember, what I like to say is you're not a newspaper, you're an information company. Let me say that again. You're never a newspaper. That's just one channel for the many different ways you can package your content. And the more and different ways you package it, and I know you hear this all the time, please forgive me, but I traveled into some of your cities. I spent 20 years as a media advertising consultant. I heard it in India, France, Germany, South America, Central America, all over the United States and Canada. I have heard these words when a salesman says, I have too much to sell. Now, I'm going to pause on that because I know it was just translated into Spanish, but I will bet you as many pesos or dollars you want, you've heard those words. And the response to your sales team is good, because all media is simply channels that are targeted to different types of readers. And the more, as I like to say, arrows in your quiver you have to bring out to the advertiser, the more ways you can target their advertising dollars today. So I like to think of a newsroom as simply an information center. And if you can start packaging your products digitally, print, email, social media, video, podcast, or what have you, you're simply using that information into different segments to help build the critical advertising dollars we need in today's world. They've also gone off in another direction that's very important. Many of you I know are in that space, entering that space, and understand the value of that space. This is when you do not sell your core competency, which is content. You sell digital services. I just attended a big conference in Miami called the Burrell Conference. Gordon Burrell, good friend of mine, runs a very big research company in the United States. And almost half the content was not selling advertising or marketing, it was selling digital services, which means you're doing website development, you're doing social media, you're doing brand strategies, you become an advertising agency for your customers. And I know for a fact, many of you have moved into that direction as well. So that's why we love this publication, because of the, as we like to say, the many different ways in this medium-sized market, they have found revenue so they can keep winning those journalism awards. Remember, it's all about still maintaining the newsroom, but finding the profit that makes it happen. All right, we're now obviously at number 2. Let's move on to number 3, back to another small town, one of my favorites. This is South Central Kansas. If you ever remember the movie, The Wizard of Oz, it's where the tornadoes may fly. You're now in a very small town. And this is a small area coming out of a city known as Clarion. And Clarion is a farming community. And around it now, there's a cluster of 5 newspapers owned by this gentleman. We saluted this gentleman as one of our 25 under 35. This gentleman and his wife now are one of the #1 publishing companies in Kansas. They have won more awards than any other publishing company in the state of Kansas for their local journalism. The man is very, very young. He is the youngest newspaper owner in the United States of America. But he has a commitment to these towns. He does the journalism. His wife operates the business side. They now have a team of about 20, and they're having an amazingly good time keeping these communities informed. Plus, again, they've moved into different revenue streams that we found very fascinating. In this case, they're doing what we call specialty advertising. They actually have a store where you can upload your logo and then have it imprinted on many different things like t-shirts, mugs, jewelry, anything, books. And this has become a local profit center to help sponsor their journalism. Plus, they also have technology services available as well. And through all these different channels, they're able to maintain their high level of journalism. So not only is Kansas Publishing Ventures one of our 20, as we like to say, our 10 that do it right, they also have become one of the best newspaper companies we've seen in finding great revenue streams and having a commitment to local journalism. Now let's go to a big city. One I bet you likely have visited, maybe not, unless, well, if you like to gamble, you may have heard of Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, Las Vegas, Nevada is a very interesting newspaper town because for a very, very long time, two newspapers operated under one company. We call that here a JOA. It stands for Joint Operating Agreement. And sometimes when you have competing companies, we're just two newspapers in the same market, rather than one buying the other or one absorbing the other, it is more financially beneficial to simply merge assets together, keep the company separate, but then allow it to operate as a single entity. I hope that translated well. The company we're saluting now is the Las Vegas Review-Journal and the Las Vegas Sun, but now their Las Vegas Review-Journal has spun off on its own and decided now that they're going to do something that's new and innovative in the United States for newspapers. You likely have been studying the move to nonprofit. Now, I'm not advocating that the only way for local journalism to survive in tough economic times, when we all know that Google and Facebook are taking tons of our local revenue money away, we know that we no longer can rely on, I'm not sure of your markets and all the different cultures that are on this broadcast, but in the United States, we lost our classified revenue. Jobs, homes, cars, gone. We lost it to the internet. We're also losing our insert, our pre-press, our flyers that go inside the newspaper, because the average consumer now is much happier to get that content on their phone. So without those revenue streams, how do you survive and still do, remember, our core mission, that final check on power, that thriving newsroom that does more than just report on a fire or a baseball score, that newsroom that does investigative journalism to be that final check on power, that truth to power. Well, the Las Vegas Review-Journal went into a nonprofit mode that has seemed to move them into an amazingly, amazingly good direction right now. No, excuse me, I'm wrong. Please forgive me. It's early in the morning here. I got up very early. The Las Vegas Review-Journal is not nonprofit. Take that out of your brain. I'm thinking of one coming up in 2 minutes, the Salt Lake City Tribune. Say it with me. I'm sorry. What we loved about this one, and I'm looking at my notes now because I had my editorial team build this for me. Please forgive me. I want you to rewind the tape back a few minutes. Ricardo, do you want to fire me now? And I won't bill you for the time. Is it okay that I made that?
Everything that happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. So
And by the way, we rehearsed that joke just for you. And we'll be appearing later today on the fourth Lido deck on the ship for our comedy act. But anyway, what we loved about this group, and this is something that's near and dear to me, is they started a television show. Now, listen carefully about this show. This became a huge revenue stream to help support their journalism, but it's only 7 minutes long, and it's once a day. Now, how can you take all the news of the day and make it 7 minutes long? The answer is you have to. Why? all research shows, at least in the United States, I haven't read the research in your culture, but I bet TikTok and other platforms are pushing people into the mode, the new generation, we call them here Generation Z, that they want their content in short segments. So what they do now is a 7-minute quick update every day on a very innovative platform they call 7 at 7. They sell no commercials. Wait a second. They do what's called sponsored content. Now, I am all about sponsored content. Some of you may or may not enjoy that phrase. I have met publishers who are scared or fear sponsored content because they're afraid of that blending between what we like to say in the United States, church and state, news and advertising. You may be diminishing your local brand. You may hurt your journalistic integrity. I am a 140-year-old newspaper. My magazine. My magazine has been run by Pulitzer Prize winners. My magazine is the Bible of an industry, and my #1 revenue stream that supports my journalism is this very platform you're looking at now. I not only host a very, very popular vodcast. We call it a vodcast, not a podcast, because it's video and audio. We also use a YouTube channel, plus all the various podcast channels. I also sell a 30 to 45-minute interview twice a month to a business. I'm very select about who I allow in. It must have value to my readers. That is the definition of what we call native advertising or sponsored content. You may have heard of the term, and again, Ricardo, I know that woman is working so hard to translate me now, and I feel so sorry for her, but there's a term in the United States we call advertorial, which means we are allowing an advertiser to trick the reader. You can put your ad in the paper. We'll use the same font as the newspaper. We'll trick them to think it's an ad. That's advertorial. Sponsored content is when the content has a tremendous amount of value to the reader. We do that as well. We interview customers of our customers. We make them case studies. And that's what they're doing in Las Vegas now with this innovative show, which is now generating tons of revenue and building new audience, almost 1 million now viewers a month. And it's only online. It's not on television. It's what we call streaming right now. And they then edit it up into small segments for social media. Amazing revenue stream and not nonprofit. Let me take that back one last time. Las Vegas Review Journal in Las Vegas, Nevada is for profit. Sorry, please excuse my mistake. In the recording, we will edit that out. Now we move on. Another small town. I hope you're not upset with the little communities, but one of the things E&P likes to focus on is the resurgence of local journalism in small towns. What happened is one of the largest media companies in North America, the largest, Gannett, which is a merger between Gatehouse Media and Gannett, which gobbled up most of the newspapers in the United States and now has almost 1 out of 2. They are selling off the smaller ones back to the local communities, and different owners and entrepreneurs are taking them over. And we love to report on this because these practices are wonderful. So now I'm taking you to California, to one of the most beautiful spots in the world. You are now in Maricopa County. You're in a gorgeous part of California where they have mountains and they have just beauty and a great, great area. And I want to introduce you to a town with a population of about 17,000, a newspaper with a circulation of 5,000, and an amazing publisher who purchased a dying newspaper that was owned by one of these big companies, the big company, who had done an unfortunate thing. They had allowed the paper to just not really function. It was down to, believe it or not, 4 pages a week. I mean, the newsroom wasn't even in existence in a way. Now, normally an entrepreneur would look at something like that and say, I'm not even going to go near that. I'll start up a competitor. But she purchased this paper and she put life into it. It reminds me a little bit of what I did with editor and publisher. I took a magazine that was not getting a lot of love, That's what I called it when I went and did my due diligence and flew to California and analyzed the product. I saw potential, I saw audience, I saw brand recognition. You know how hard it is in today's world to build a brand, especially in a world where the average human being is influenced by 5,000 advertising messages a day? You need sometimes to take a brand and breathe life into it. That's what the famous Warren Buffett used to say. If you read his biographies, he would say, I never bought a company unless it was like a smoldering cigar on the pavement that I could pick up and breathe life into. And that's the Mariposa Gazette, because this woman expanded its coverage and she invested in her newsroom, invested in her sales effort. And by putting good journalism out, the last edition, which I just looked at online, was up to 28 pages. She almost has a 50-50, let me say that so it can be translated, 50% to 50% advertising to content ratio. And it's a very, very profitable product right now. And we also loved when it was submitted, the energy of this publication, because they're very much into events and sponsorships. They're very much into being embedded in the community. We found that fascinating. Mariposa Gazette. Remember, there's one web address you can go to as we're halfway through and read more in-depth content about these top 10 American news publishers. Okay, we're still in the United States of America, but we're going to go very, very far west now. We're going to go to the island of Hawaii. And we're going to explore one of the largest, most successful publishing companies in North America today, which is Oahu Publications. They own the Honolulu Star Advertiser. And I love the way they really position themselves. We're not a typical newspaper. We're a full service media organization. It's just a wonderful way, because not only are they part of the Gannett empire, again, this is part of that huge company, but they also have other publications associated with it. And through their growth, amazing content, commitment to the community, the Honolulu Star Advertiser is now the 9th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th most published newspaper in North America. Think about that on the small island of Hawaii. But they don't stop there. Again, diversifying revenue and diversifying audience. What I said earlier is I never like to think of myself as a magazine. I think of myself as an information company. My magazine is not where my largest audience is. By the way, I'll let you in for a secret. My largest audience is by email now. My second largest audience is online. My third largest audience is in print. My fourth largest audience is in my vodcast, and my fifth is my social media. And I'm very comfortable that way. That's the way it should be. I love print, but it's just another channel. So look at the amazing channels when we explored Oahu Publications. Not only do they have various magazines and gorgeous print products that have a massive penetration to the state of Hawaii and wonderful, innovative ways to display them, they do live broadcasts and podcasts. Now, this is what I'm starting to explore more and more. And if there's a word I want you to start to embrace, and I heard this during the Burrell conference, we're doing studies on it now, we're issuing articles about it now, and I will be doing a presentation in 4 weeks at the newspapers, American Newspapers, newspapers.org's mega conference in Orlando, Florida. Influencer, that's the word. Influencer. You don't just have a podcast. You don't just have a Facebook Live broadcast. The person who's hosting it becomes your influencer. Let me say that again. And if you don't believe me, some of the top paid entertainers in the United States of America are not on movies, in movies, and not on television. They're on social media and YouTube. They are making more money and have larger audience than the biggest stars in Hollywood, California today. That is the future. And you call them an influencer. They have, in our industry, they should have journalistic integrity. I am the influencer editor and publisher. I took that reign proudly because I had 20 years on stages all over the world, and I established myself as a separate consultant worldwide, took over this industry publication. I let my editorial team do their job. When I do in-depth broadcasts, I bring them on the broadcast, and they challenge me if I say something wrong. That's okay. I'm okay with that. You should have an influencer that helps put your news and that content into new places, like the Honolulu Star Advertiser. They also have an amazing amount of live events. Now, what are live events, and why are, now that COVID is hopefully fading in your culture, it's definitely fading here. A live event could be a lot of trouble. But if you do an event about food, or you do an event about helping the elderly, or if you do an event about home and garden, or do an event about family or money, you are bringing human beings into an event you can database for your customers. If I don't eat, I wouldn't go to a food event. If I don't own a home, I wouldn't go to a home improvement event. If I don't have an elderly parent, I wouldn't go to an event about helping the elderly. All this and more is a way of taking your wide audience and bringing them into a niche so you can sell advertising to your customers better. That's why I like events, because events allow you to take your audience and segment them in a very creative and fun way. Not only are they profitable, but they make money over time. They also own and maintain one of the top direct mail companies on the island. And I actually like direct mail today if it's highly segmented. Why? Because we're not getting as much mail anymore. Think about how that beautiful piece in the mail sticks out more, because we're not getting as much mail. We do email. And they have a wonderful, innovative product they're doing, they call merchant services. And what merchant services are, is they're allowing people to save money, their own customers, their own businesses, by reducing credit card fees. And believe it or not, editor and publisher just signed with them. We now use a new innovative way to have people send their money to us, our customers, via direct transfer and not through credit cards. And I save tens of thousands of dollars every year, and so do their customers, and they make money doing it. They are now displaying that product at various shows around the island and now around the United States. And here's the most innovative reason. This #1 platform of theirs really, really shined. They're selling digital display advertising in stores all over the island. A lot of you may already be doing this, but in the United States, it's kind of new to do what we call out-of-home display and form networks and join networks. I know it's getting big in Europe. It's actually established in South America. But through all these revenue streams, we really thought the Honolulu Star Advertiser and Oahu Publications deserved to be one of our top 10. I'm a little slow right now. I need 7 more minutes of your time. I'm only going to leave 10 minutes for your Q&A, your questions and answers, but let's move on to the last 3. This is Pioneer Publishing in Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha, Nebraska is a large city in the middle of the United States. This is the home of Warren Buffett, who I mentioned earlier. And he used to own the Omaha World Herald. In a way, he almost still does, because all the deals he did when he sold his empire, which was Berkshire Hathaway, and then Lee Media, Lee Enterprises took it over. He provided the financing. So in a way, he's still making money and he still loves his hometown newspaper. But we're not discussing the Omaha World Herald. We're discussing 2 of their competitors here. What we're discussing is the Reader. We call that an alternative weekly. An alternative weekly in the United States is a weekly newspaper that tends to lead politically to the left. Just about all of them do. I only know of a couple that stay more central. And they're very, very liberal when it comes to social issues and political issues, which is okay. That's the direction they tend to be in. They also do more in-depth reporting, check on power, than most other publications around the United States. They'll spend weeks investigating a specific issue in state or local government, and they tend to bring in a lot of young, vibrant readers. What I like about the Alternative Weekly and the research that backs it up, in the United States, the ads are content because they're all about bars and restaurants and concerts and venues and art. And those ads, That's why alternative weeklies usually publish on a Thursday. They're always free. They're always everywhere. They're racked, we call it. They're in restaurants. They're in everywhere. So people can pick them up on a Thursday and plan their weekend. And those ads are amazingly good content. And that is good money. Plus, great readership, because people who tend to go out tend to have money to spend. The same company then in the last 8 years launched a Hispanic publication. And we like that as well because of the growing Hispanic population in the United States. Moreover, it becomes a big part of local labor forces all over the United States. It wasn't just the fact that they had The Alternative and El Perico. I know I'm mispronouncing it, their Hispanic publication. They also went all in again on digital services, to the point where they have been building some of the top websites in their community, including some of the local government websites. Their digital services strategy has definitely become one of the top in the United States, and we do have some of our websites hosted with them here, there at Editor and Publisher. We're so impressed with their work. Wonderful organization, great to be number 7 on our list. We're getting down near the end. So now I want to take you to a newspaper you may have heard of a few minutes ago, and you may be aware of, that I got mixed up when I said nonprofit. This is the Salt Lake Tribune, which used to have a joint operating agreement with Deseret Media in Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City, Utah is a famous city in the United States. It was formed by the Mormon religion and culture. We call that here LDS, Latter-day Saints. 3/4 of the population is LDS, as we like to say. It's a large community, and the biggest newspaper there is the Salt Lake Tribune, which is now nonprofit, and they have parted ways with Deseret News, the other newspaper in town, which is the official publication of the Mormon Church and owns the #1 TV and radio station in the market. You have to understand the Mormon Church owns media in Salt Lake City, Utah. But the Salt Lake City Tribune decided to go off on its own, sever its partnership with Deseret News, and become a nonprofit entity. That's what when I was talking joint operating agreements, I remembered that this was one of the ones we have. What they have done that we found innovative, let me use that word again, innovative, for number 8, was their innovation lab. What they're doing in their innovation lab, which we found very exciting because we've been reporting on this for over a year, they're using data-driven journalism to identify solutions that need to be met to the public and then work with the public to help solve those problems. Data-driven journalism, it sounds kind of computery, doesn't it? But all it really means is you're looking at information available to you within your own community and looking at income disparity, gender disparity of anything, or any kind of data that will force you to look at a real story and then visualize the story and then find the solution for it. So they've made this innovation lab, which has been very, very exciting to watch. And what they've been doing with their local community leaders is solving some big problems. And if you go to their innovation lab, you will see how they pointed out a challenge, worked with local community leaders, and helped solve those problems in a nonprofit environment. And they're getting tremendous awards and a lot of recognition within the United States. We're up at number 9 now with 11 minutes to go. This is one of the largest papers in the United States, in one of our largest cities. We're discussing Atlanta, Georgia. Likely you know Atlanta, because they say in the United States, when you pass away in the South, whether you go to heaven or to the other place, you stop in Atlanta on the way. It is the world's busiest airport. And by the way, it's not the largest city in the United States. You know, New York and Philadelphia and Houston and Los Angeles and Chicago eclipse them in size. But the reason it's the world's busiest airport is all those other cities I mentioned have more than one airport, not Atlanta, one big one. And that's obviously why this city is known throughout the United States. But the Atlanta Journal-Constitution is it's a wonderful, wonderful newspaper owned by the Cox Media Group. And it's got a decent circulation now for a city of that size. It still maintains 174,000 plus circulation, but they're doing some very, very innovative things with reader revenue. Now, some of you call that audience revenue. Some of you just so call it subscription revenue. But what they're doing now is they're finding innovative ways through an analysis of their audience to truly make people pay for the content we produce. Again, this is a very controversial issue in the United States. Many, many companies are now locking down their content, only those that pay. I could give you a list of why that is great and a list why that is scary and not great, depending upon which side of the spectrum you believe in. Many of us believe that our content can no longer be free, but the other side of the story is, well, if it isn't free and you charge someone, are you allowing a competing media company to steal your audience? And will millennials actually pay for local content? That's the big question. But not only did they decide to do an excellent metering and subscription system for their newspaper, they did what we don't do well, at least here in the United States. They marketed themselves and the benefits of that content to the community. I mean, we are in the marketing business. We are in the advertising business. How come we're so bad at doing it about ourselves? We do it for our customers, but at least here in the United States, we've always done a lousy job telling our readers why we're so valuable. So I like the name they used, Press On, because press refers to a printing press, but all of the ways they're marketing themselves is about innovation, investigation, what they do, and the quality of the journalism they perform. And by doing this properly and positioning themselves properly, they really have become a force in Atlanta, Georgia, and their circulation revenues are way up. Let me share this with you.
We press on for you because it's our mission. Dedicated to investigation because the facts matter. Fueled with determination because it's our calling. Driven by passion because you deserve to know what's really going on. Please support real journalism.
Okay, now, if I may move on and simply give you the final take on that, according to their publisher, Donna Hall, they are now way ahead of goal when it comes to digital subscriptions. They have over 43,000, beating their goal, doing exceptionally well by using their marketing campaign. All right, I'm way over time, Ricardo. I still have one more to go. Here is the Tennessean in the wonderful city of Nashville, Georgia. If you like country and Western music, you've heard of Nashville, huge city, almost 700,000 residents and the surrounding area. The Tennessean is amazingly strong newspaper, again, owned by the Gannett Network, the same as the Honolulu Star Advertisers we showed you. And for the first time in our history, they've made it the list twice. We had them in it 2021. We did not want to bring them in again, but we had to because they've done a wonderful job increasing digital-only subscribers by really forcing it into a whole new way of analyzing their company, their staff, their engagement and coverage. When we analyzed this newspaper and how they're doing so well with it, we realized what they're doing is basically just looking at their metrics, looking at the stories that people engage with, and making sure they're understanding. If there's one thing, and I know I'm going quickly here, that I have learned from very, very effective media companies that are building readers and subscribers, they take the data into the newsroom. Let me say that again. Some of the most innovative editors today start their editorial meeting with yesterday's metrics. Which stories got clicked on? Which one had the longest engagement? Stop writing things that no one wants to see. Write to the audience to build the engagement. And all the data is there. Stop being scared of it. Let the digital team share with you an easy to share report with every writer, every editor, and go over that data with them so you can see where your engagement's coming from. And I promise you, if you do that, your subscriptions and readership will go up. The best advice I ever got from a radio expert when I started off as a radio manager back in the 1980s was a famous man named Mike Joseph, who invented what we call top 40. Everybody thought he was crazy because he was playing the same records over and over, the same 40 records. And everybody said, no one will listen to that. But he had research that that's what the audience wants. And I met him at a convention and I asked his advice and he said these words, listen carefully, find out what they want and give it to them. That's the secret for engagement. The other thing they've done, that since we're in a world now of wanting to expand diversity, not just in our newsrooms, but to our readership, is they've started Black Tennessee Voices. And what they found through those engagement is these newsletters and these articles were getting massive engagement to their diverse audience. So they found the way to build readership through content, and very innovative, award-winning content. We loved what we read. We loved the way they were addressing the community. We loved the education process as well. So there you go. There's our top 10 in a row. Once again, I only gave it a very small amount of mention for each one. If you go to editorandpublisher.com/10, you will see an amazing amount of more in-depth reporting on these 10 great operations. Ricardo, I let you down. I went too long. How did I do, sir?
You did fine, very well. Thank you so much for this enlightening presentation. And I will try to make some comments and some questions, considering all the provocative things that you have spoken to us right now, and especially what the people have commented in the chat. Oh boy, how can I put it? First, I would say this was one of the most exciting and provocative conferences that we have had in the last couple of years in IAPA. So thank you very much for that. The people at the chat were commenting on that you gave us hope, showing these examples, because as you do in Editor and Publisher, and we do also in IAPA, we try to show the media world in its diversity and plurality, and not always try to sync our minds with the great papers or great media, that they are good as models, but sometimes do not give us the tools that we need in the small and medium media. So this was excellent. I believe, and I would say the love you said that you gave to Editor and Publisher, you gave to all these publications and to the audience today. You gave us love and hope that we can do it with so many examples that you have gave us. And the good thing about the 10 cases that you have chosen is that you touch the added value that those media has given to their community. And based on that, and I just want to ask you, when you have chosen these publications, did you consider the other great problem that we have, not only in the United States, but also in Argentina, in Colombia, Brazil, and many other countries where we are talking about the deserts, the informative deserts that we are starting to experience in many of our countries. Many media are closing down, and we have that problem. If you can elaborate a little bit about that.
That's I would say that was touched by number 3 and 5 by these young and innovative entrepreneurs that purchased these languishing, unloved publications and brought them back. But do we have, we call them news deserts here in the United States. Right. Yes, we've done extensive reporting on that. And here's the problem with a news desert. When a community doesn't have a newspaper or local journalism entity, our research shows the community dies itself. People stop voting. People stop they stop speaking up. They stop caring. Number 2, when a news desert, if that's a wonderful, we call that a metaphor, when you use a different word to describe. So here's another metaphor to go with it. When you have the news desert, people become thirsty and they drink other news, and they drink fake news, and they drink biased news. So here's the debate we're having now, and we have many on my podcast. You really have to explore them, because here's the challenge. In our Constitution, we have to have a free press. But how do you define what local journalism is? You can't give it a license. In some of your countries, journalists have to have a license, right? But you can't do that, because then you're regulating what is good news and bad news. Look what Putin's doing now with his journalists. He's shutting them down. So we're always debating, how do you come up with what's truth and exploit that without the government becoming involved? Here's what I say about our Constitution. It is a wonderful document, perfect document, written by very imperfect men. And it has been shredded. It has been torn at. We've had a civil war over it. Our culture is not perfect by any stretch, but we always manage to come out of the other side of these crises stronger. And not only are we having a crisis in journalism in a polarized society, we're watching democracy itself at war right now. And that is the big issue where journalism comes in. Can we have truth and light through this? So I answer your question this way. Deserts are bad. But is a newspaper a business that government should prop up, or is it just another business? And that's the decision we have to look at now. I hope I answered your question.
You did.